Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy, man. For today's video, we got a video by Johnny Arnett titled How to Fix the NBA. So I'm actually really excited to see his opinion on this right here, just because I will say for like the past 15 years, it's hard for me to give a non-biased opinion about this because yes, in my opinion, the NBA is not as fun to watch. But also my favorite basketball team is the Detroit Pistons. So it's like there hasn't been, I'll sit there and watch a different team's playoff game or big primetime game, and I'll be like, man, it just feels like it's a completely different world than what I'm used to. Because I could turn on a Pistons game and watch, George Blaha call every single dunk a tomahawk dunk. Now, I love George Blaha, by the way. He's like one of my favorite commentators of all time. But, we don't really win games or make it to the playoffs. And when we do, we don't really do well in it, man. So it makes for basketball to not be as exciting. But let's check this out. I still think there's probably some issues in the NBA. So let's see what he brings to light here, man.
One of the most interesting NBA rumors that I've heard in a while is that the league's commissioner Adam Silver is on a short list of potential candidates to be the successor of Bob Iger as Disney CEO.
Oh, okay.
As of now, it's just a report of something that could potentially happen. But if it did, the NBA would be looking for a new commissioner to run the league. With someone else in charge, the game would obviously change.
What y'all want, man? The NBA,
better,
let me know.
Or for the worse. This got me thinking, what would I change if I was the commissioner of the NBA?
All right, Commissioner Johnny, I like it.
3 things that I would do
I'm here for it.
The NBA if I was in charge. And let me know in the comments what 3 things you would do if you were the commissioner of the
3 things off the top of my head is I would, man, off the top of my head is actually really tough here. I want the one-on-one tournament. I want that for the NBA All-Star weekend. I personally would like to somehow incorporate the post game a bit more back into the NBA, slow things down a little bit, but I don't really see a way that's going to do it because, 3-pointers are fun, but I liked it when the NBA was more strategic and not so analytic based, I want, like these are our assets right here. This is what their strengths are. This is how we're going to score. But not like everybody just shoots threes because that's analytically what it says you can do. And then the third one, I would say maybe something along the lines of, I know they got the super max contracts and all that stuff now, but some way to get a small market compensation for players to go to teams that typically don't get players. Maybe they get paid a little bit more playing Detroit or something like that. That would be kind of cool. That's really just off the top of my head. Probably horrible, man, but maybe I'll do a video on that eventually myself.
The league. Let me first start out by saying that I'm not a big fan of Adam Silver.
Laker fans in the comments,
the way
man.
He's ran the league. Without sugarcoating anything, in many ways, I believe he's failed the NBA, and one of the biggest areas that he's done that is in the aspect of flopping. One of the worst things you can do as a parent, as a disciplinarian, or as a leader is threaten really strong consequences for breaking certain rules just to weakly enforce those rules when the time comes for the consequences. It makes you into a joke and teaches your subordinates that they don't need to respect or adhere to your authority. That's exactly what Adam Silver did when it comes to flopping. Here's what I mean by this. In 2012, the NBA announced that the league would start strongly cracking down on flopping.
Yeah, that was,
come on, Tony. Flops during the regular season would first be warned, followed by fines in increments of $5,000 for each successful flop during the season.
Yeah,
when this rule was announced, there was a lot of excitement amidst basketball fans, as many people believed, including myself, that this marked the end of flopping. We couldn't have been more incorrect.
$5,000.
It seems that flopping has only gotten worse. Since the league has established the rule,
imagine doing something horrible at your job and your boss is like, all right, you're losing 5 cents.
There have been only 31 fines given to the players, hundreds if not thousands of flops during that time span, and yet only a mere 31 fines. Famous floppers like James Harden,
so was that 180K?
James have been fined only once,
fines?
And Chris Paul has never been fined. If that doesn't get the point across, then consider this. How many total flops do you think you've seen in the last 2 seasons of the NBA?
Trillion.
Well, believe it or not, the NBA hasn't fined a single player in the last 2 years.
Wow.
It appears as if Adam Silver has completely given up on flopping. Even if the league was
And you know what? That really puts a lot of pressure on the referees also, because the referees, it's basically like they have to get it right. And, you know, referees are humans. Like, you're going to miss things. But if they don't get it right, then everybody's like, wow, the refs didn't call this player flopped and there was no consequences. I think personally, you need to, like, if you can look back at the game and see stuff like this, stuff that's just so blatantly obvious, 1 game suspension. Just 1 game. You are out for the next game for flopping. Like, players aren't, and sure, like, maybe a player will be like, well, it's a back-to-back, man, like, I'm trying to get my load management on. Then it's like, then they'll do that or something, but, or maybe for like a 2-game suspension. Just something that's, you know, not the worst thing in the world, but still has consequence.
Out more penalties, a warning and a $5,000 fine was such a weak approach from the start. If I was the commissioner, I would crack down harshly to such an extent that it simply couldn't continue on for that long. For egregious flops, the player would be given either a technical foul or a personal foul. If the flop came from an offensive player, it would be a loss of possession to go along with the foul. Multiple violations within the same season would result in a 1-game suspension without pay. If anyone thinks this sounds...
Man, I feel a little bit too harsh now. No, I just think that, like, obviously Johnny and I are on the same page here, so it sounds like I'm being a little bit more strict with it. But when it comes down to it, I think that it's one of those things that affects the game. But it's also one of those things where to get it right as a referee, and to, like, it's going to result in having to stop the game again and, like, knowing in the moment if it's a flop or not. And I think it's going to slow down the game a little bit, where it's like, it's so obvious what they're doing here that I'm okay with. If it affects the game, that's fine. But the player that did it is going to be out the next game. That's how I kind of look at it.
Too harsh, then they probably handle this issue about as well as Silver has. The next thing I would address is the massive issue of load management.
It's a tough one.
Minnesota's young star, Anthony Edwards, recently stated my thoughts on the matter perfectly.
If there's anything I could change about the league to make it better, probably just all the guys sitting resting. That's the only thing I probably don't like. 80%, you got to play. I don't like all the sitting, missing games and stuff. Like, these people might have enough money to come to 1 game, you know what I'm saying? And that might be the game they come to, and then you sitting out. You know what I'm saying? So,
I feel like every single game that I watch that's nationally televised, there's some buzzkill going on because there's 1 or 2 of the star players sitting out, or somebody's injured, or whatever it may be. Now, injuries do happen, but I just feel like it's every game now. I feel like I rarely get to see a full-strength matchup, and I feel like that's really ruined the nationally televised games and, you know, the NBA in general. The only way... See, this one's tough, though, because... Well, I guess, you know, they do have, like, the best doctors in the world for these teams, so they can kind of like, figure out, like, what's wrong with these players, if there's actually something wrong, or, you know, if they're lying or whatnot. I guess, do you somehow try to tie games played? No, actually, no. I forgot who I heard it from, but it basically said to tie in accolades, you know, or like awards, like winning MVP or Defense Player of the Year, or all NBA teams, or, you know, all-star appearances into games played. Like, if you don't play this amount of games, you are not going to be qualified for this award, which I really like, because I feel like when there's, like, all, you know, players that make the all-star team and they've missed 20 or 30 games over somebody that maybe played not as great, but has been doing it the entire season, that type of stuff kind of, you know, is annoying. So maybe something like that would help.
So I take pride in trying to play every game, because I don't know, it might be one fan that has never seen me play, and I'm trying.
Yeah, but you are only like 21,
that's the
my
only
man.
thing I don't like. Guys,
you ain't got the wear and tear yet.
This isn't just a small issue, as many young fans often end up disappointed when their favorite player chooses to sit out the only game.
I think players get burnt out though too, you know?
If you don't realize just how common load management is compared to years past, then consider this. Last season, league-wide, only 5 players played all 82 games of the regular season, and 13 players played at least 80 games.
Okay.
None of those 13 players were an NBA All-Star. 30 years
probably all in the
that
Toronto
was
Raptors
the 1991 to 92 season.
Playing every minute.
And that year, 53 players played all 82 games, and a whopping 105 players played at least 80 games. 14 All-Stars played at least 80 games that season, which is well over half of the NBA's
and they still have to go to their job as plumbers after.
Decades ago, almost every fan had an experience worth the price of their ticket. But nowadays, you never know who will be on the court on any given night. Sure, it helps preserve the health of the players, and it helps them be in the best shape possible for the playoffs, But these players are made millionaires thanks to the supporting customers. The least they can do is...
Yeah, it's even hard to say, like, because I haven't thought about, okay, like, shorten the NBA season. Like, they're not going to do that because that's going to hurt the bottom line. And I think at the end of the day, I don't know if the commissioner really cares all that much. Like, we still go into the games, you know? Maybe... Yeah, it's like, because it's like the only solutions I can think of would be things that are like pro the fan, but it's going to hurt the bottom line, so you know the big corporations aren't going to do. Because I'm like, well, maybe you can get a refund if certain players don't play. Or maybe you get like a discount on a future ticket or something like that. I don't really know, but even that, it's going to hurt the bottom line. So they could just be like, no, we're not going to do that, and you're just going to be screwed out of your money.
Go out there consistently and show their appreciation for the fans by actually participating in the game. But obviously, that's probably a little too much to ask for without the commissioner stepping in and giving some sort of enforcement. Now, I understand that being the NBA's commissioner doesn't mean that you have unlimited power, as the collective bargaining agreement and contracts play a part of this as well. But I would do everything in my power to encourage players to participate. In most jobs across the United States, if you don't show up for work, then you don't get paid. Obviously, there's some exceptions to that, but for the most part, that's simply how it is.
Yes, people get sick days.
Players are paid a full salary while missing a tremendous amount of games. But if their pay was dependent on it, trust me, they would be in uniform more consistently. I would endorse contract-specific incentives that would reward players financially for playing at least 75 games in a season. A bonus only seems fitting for a player showing up to work diligently. Unfortunately, under Adam Silver, this isn't the reality we're living in, as it almost seems like load managing has his stamp of approval. Speaking of which, today's video is brought to you by
stamps. Let's get the man's code up in here, man. I actually gotta get some stamps soon. Y'all know that that dang tax season, man. So we got stamps.com, code Johnny Arnett, man. All right, let's get it. Next part here.
Would probably be my most controversial decision. I would extend the three-point line. Throughout the years, the three-point shot has completely taken over the game of basketball, to the point that any player who can't make the shot consistently is seen as a detriment to the offense. Today,
you would have to extend the whole court though to do that, because you can't really like you can't extend it farther out. Well, I don't know. You also get, players with these, big, huge feet and stuff looking like Sora in Kingdom Hearts or something. Keep on stepping out of bounds too. So maybe expanding the court width-wise wouldn't be a bad idea either. But you would need to do that because otherwise you would expand out the top of the of the arc. But then players would just be shooting the corner threes because that'd still be the same distance. But I do actually like that a lot because that would really limit just the skill gap of three-point shooting, which it seems like everybody can just do it now anyway.
Shooting about 3 times more three-pointers than they did in the 90s.
Put it back about 20 feet.
And about double the amount of the 2000s. The reason for this is obvious. It's simple math. If your team is shooting 40% from three-point range and 50% from two-point range, over the course of the game, you will score more points by shooting threes than by shooting twos. It's simply the most valuable shot in the game today.
Yep.
It no longer
unless I'm taking
which
the shot.
position you play on the court. If you're playing, then you're expected to launch the three ball. Now, this is a wonderful thing in the sense that more players are becoming sharpshooters. But the part that isn't great is how it affects the variety of the game. In my opinion, the game has lost much of its diversity and style. I'm not saying there isn't superstar players who are uniquely different from each other in today's game, because there certainly is.
Man, what I would do to see a CP3 David West pick and pop from the elbow, man. That used to be my play, man. I used to love that play. They would do that all the time. The man would be feasting on the Pelicans. Or I'm sorry, the Hornets at the time.
But they aren't quite as unique as they were in the 1990s, where players were more celebrated for their differences. Shaq was the one who could simply overpower you. Hakeem was the one with the artistic finesse. Ewing was the blend of both. Penny was the point guard who could facilitate and score. Sean Kemp was the one who punished you with his freakish
Everyone a demigod now.
Barkley and Malone were bullies in the paint, but just don't ask them to shoot three-pointers. Reggie Miller was your downtown assassin. Scottie Pippen was your slasher, facilitator blend. And Jordan was the one who had a bit of everything. These past stars were allowed to thrive in their own unique and specific skill sets. Again, there are plenty of players in the modern game who are uniquely different in their skill set. But they're not allowed to fully embrace those differences because of the now common belief that every star needs to be a ball handler and a perimeter threat.
What is that shot,
and unfortunately,
Giannis?
if you don't do both of those things,
why are you holding it like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist?
Take Russell Westbrook and Ben Simmons as examples. Now here's how extending the three-point line fixes this. By increasing the distance of the three-point shot, the conversion rate obviously goes down, which then naturally increases the value of the two-point shot. In that case, players like Joel Embiid can completely embrace his mid-range game and become a modern rendition of Hakeem Olajuwon on offense. Players like Zion Williamson can fully embrace his bully ball style without having to step outside of his comfort zone and shoot.
Imagine how that would switch up the defense too. You wouldn't have players hawking the 3-point line and everything with the perimeter defense. So, man, it would change everything. Please, let's move out the 3-point line. It's getting too easy. It's 3 points. It shouldn't be easy.
3-pointers. And ideally, we would never have to see an awkward 3-point attempt again from players like Giannis, as he can embrace his natural skill set. Now, some may say that this would hinder the great 3-point shooters of this era,
No.
but I would actually argue the contrary. With a 3-point line a couple feet beyond what it currently is, players like Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, and Trae Young become even more special.
At the rate we're going, Gary Trent Jr. is going to pass Ray Allen in 3-point makes.
Because they're more of a rarity. If not everyone can make shots from the distance that they can and is worth more points, then they naturally increase their demand and are celebrated to an even greater extent for their uniqueness. At the end of the day, I think this would work.
I like it.
But even if it didn't, you could just do what they did in the late 90s and put the 3-point line back to its original position after a couple years.
Yeah.
The risk is minimal,
Try it
but
out.
the potential reward is through the roof. So what do you guys think?
Man, I like it. I like these. Some really good ideas, Johnny. That's all we got for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace out, my friends.